We've had a very busy day of NHL trades. Now we're going to run down all the latest rumors for the remaining players for what we might see between now and Monday. We'll jump into the latest talking about teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs, Carolina Hurricanes, Chicago Blackhawks, Dallas Stars, Columbus Blue Jackets, and a whole lot more. We'll get into the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to do a bit of a rundown here for all the latest rumors for a lot of the deals that have not yet happened, for what we think is going to happen based on what the NHL insiders are reporting on here between now and the NHL trade deadline coming up on Monday afternoon. So we've had a very busy day. If you haven't been able to keep up, or if you haven't had time to watch all of our videos here today, or if you missed any of the other news, we've had a number of somewhat smaller but yet fairly significant trades. We've seen David Savard go, Devin Dubnyk, Patrick Nemeth has been moved, Brandon Montour has already been traded. We'll certainly link those in the YouTube cards. You can go back on the channel to get all caught up in case you haven't already done so. But essentially right now, we're going to start with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, we saw them make a trade yesterday for Riley Nash, who was out for the season. So essentially they picked up a player who can help them create some more cap space by expanding their LTIR pool, and he would be eligible to play in the playoffs, and he should be healthy somewhere around the early start of the first round. So he could potentially still be a player for them, but yet still gives them the extra space. It was a brilliant move. They only had to pay a 7th round pick, and of course, they also, part of that to make it all work is Freddie Anderson had to go on LTI as well. So technically, we don't know the status of Freddie Anderson, which is kind of confusing all of this. There's really being vague with the updates. We don't really know exactly for sure what's going on and if or when he's going to be back during this regular season. So obviously his return would be a huge impact financially from the cap wise, and it could be a big return in the playoffs. It's hard to say how this is going to go. There's a lot of question marks here that we don't know, but we do know that the Maple Leafs are still making some moves here. There's no doubt that they're going to have at least one, maybe two more players be acquired before the deadline comes and passes on Monday. They've been linked to several different guys. We're hearing that they're in talks with potentially the Flyers on Scott Laughton. There's talk that they would be checking in Columbus with Nick Foligno. That could be a very interesting acquisition there. Certainly a hard-nosed kind of guy. Laughton can play a physical style as well. There's also talk that they could be in on Taylor Hall. We're going to talk a little bit more about Hall here in a few minutes, but I think that the Leafs are certainly checking in with Hall, and I know there was a lot of insiders saying that the Leafs were checking with the Sabres quite regularly. Doesn't mean that was on Hall, though, because they have a lot of players that could be moved, and they could maybe be interested for the right price, but I think that they have some interest to some degree. I'm just not convinced that he's rated at the top of their list. So I think what the Leafs end up doing could be determined here by what other teams do, the price tag. There's a lot of factors here that they're obviously all taking a look at. There's also some other players that could be more realistic for them to acquire. We're looking at like Mike Hoffman in St. Louis is another target that's been rumored. Of course, he's only making $4 million. You get the Blues to retain half of that. That's suddenly not so bad to fit in there. I know Alex Iafallo is a player that's been rumored as well. He's a pending UFA. Apparently, negotiations with the Kings are not going the best on an extension. So if he becomes available, like I mentioned in a prior video, there's been a lot of links between the Kings and the Leafs in past years. They've made a few deals together. We know they're very familiar with each other, so that sometimes helps getting negotiations going on a trade. So Iafallo would be a terrific fit as well. And then there's also even Miles Wood in New Jersey's name has been out there as a potential trade target too, which might not be too huge of a price tag, but I'm not entirely convinced New Jersey moves Miles Wood. He could still be a big part of their future. Obviously, they have a younger core that they're starting to build around and go with, and he could be a part of that. He's not, only been in the league a few years, and he's a unique kind of player compared to what else they have in the Devils organization. So, I mean, maybe he's traded, but I wouldn't completely rule it out. So the Leafs have a lot of irons in the fire here. It's difficult to say which way they go. I still will not be shocked if they pick up another goaltender as insurance with Anderson on long-term injury reserve. If he stays there for the season, they have the ability to add a forward and a goalie, and it's just difficult to say. I mean, I know they were interested in Ullmark in Buffalo. I'm not entirely convinced Buffalo moves him. It's going to have to depend on the price, but I think their preference is to keep Ullmark. Ullmark along with Ukko-Pekka Laukkanen is probably their goalies that they're going to want to run with here in the near future. So I think Ullmark likely stays in Buffalo, but if they offer a good enough price, then they'll have to consider it, I guess. But it's still a situation that could be had. Now, other goalies that they could be looking at, we're looking at Jonathan Bernier in Detroit, obviously a very familiar face there. There's been some talk about Ryan Miller in Anaheim as a potential guy as well, a veteran guy. So I think they probably... They don't make a huge move and get a starting goaltender because they have Jack Campbell playing amazing. I think that they're more than likely, if they do add a goalie, it's going to be a guy like what we saw today with Devin Dubnyk, like a veteran guy on a cheap expiring contract that can come in as an insurance piece so that they don't have to only rely on Campbell and Hutchison. They have another option there that they feel comfortable with if Anderson's not available. And if Anderson is available during the playoffs, then they have even more options. And maybe this acquisition that they make is somebody who never even plays. It's really difficult to say. So the Leafs are busy. They get their hands on a lot of pots here. It's just a matter of finding out which direction they go. But I won't be surprised if the Leafs don't make their big move until closer to the deadline as they kind of wait other teams out, see what's happening here on the market, and trying to do their cap maneuvering to maximize exactly to the penny what they can squeeze in. Because that's what they're good at. Between Pridham and Dubas, they will maximize that salary cap space as best they can and squeeze in every little penny. So we'll see what happens here with the Leafs, but lots of talk out there. They're bound to be busy. Just a matter of finding out who it's going to be. Now, some other guys that are being held out of action tonight on Saturday night here as precaution to their teams. Look, obviously, I mentioned Nick Foligno. He's not playing. Now, they're saying injury-related, but I think that's more asset management. Maybe he's got a bit of an injury too, minor injury or something, but I think that's more precaution. Matthias Janmark in Chicago, he's being held out as somebody who's getting enough interest that he's very, very likely to be traded. Obviously, he will go to really, it's hard to say where he goes. There's a variety of teams that could be interested in him. Not a huge move there by any means, but still a piece that is likely getting moved. There's some veteran defensemen gaining enough interest that they're not playing as well, including Braden Coburn in Ottawa, which kind of surprises me a little bit. And then, of course, you also have a guy like John Merrill in Detroit. He's also being held out as a potential trade. Now, when it comes to Merrill, teams like the Bruins and the Islanders were the teams that were mentioned here by Elliot Friedman as teams he believed to be making considerations in that regard. Now, it wouldn't be shocking to see the Bruins add a blue liner. Wouldn't be shocking to see the Islanders add a blue liner either. So we'll see. I mean, obviously Merrill has old connections to the Devils. So again, Lou going after somebody he knows. Not a shock there. Now, a few more defensemen that are likely available and being held out include Hayden Fleury in Carolina. Now, we know the Carolina Hurricanes are a team that has certainly been made it clear they want to add a right shot defenseman. So obviously, Fleury's a guy they feel could be expendable here. So we could see maybe a more experienced defenseman come in exchange for the younger Fleury. That's a real possibility. The Carolina Hurricanes could be looking to maybe do some other things too. We had heard from Don Waddell before that they may be open to trading a goaltender. With Mrazek coming back, they have Mrazek, Reimer, and Nedeljkovic, so they have three capable goalies, which, going for the playoffs is not a bad idea to hang on to either, but it is possible that they may have to include one of those guys to make a deal happen. But Fleury is being held out for cautious reasons as well, so we very well could see Hayden Fleury on the move. And then there's Jamie Alexiak in Dallas, apparently generating a fair bit of interest. Now, the Dallas Stars are another team not completely out of the playoff push. It'd be difficult to say what they do, but they're getting a lot of interest in Alexiak, who's the big defenseman who has occasionally chipped in with some offense. I know last year he certainly had some offensive outbursts at times, but clearly, like I said, the Hurricanes want to add. You get the Winnipeg Jets have been rumored forever to add a defenseman. They've yet to make a move. I mentioned Boston about John Merrill, so they could be in on other conversations too. We've seen Florida make their move and get Montour. We've seen Tampa get Savard, so they've probably satisfied their blue line needs. Of course, Tampa also got Brian Lashoff. It was, not a big name by any means, but still an extra depth piece that they can add in there with some experience. So clearly that's some options that are off the table now for some teams looking to make moves. So that kind of clears things up there a little bit. And that kind of takes us to Taylor Hall for the last thing I want to look at here tonight. I mean, obviously, there's been rumor that Hall's willing to do an extension with a acquiring team. He does have a no-move clause. I won't be surprised if Taylor Hall is possibly one of the last guys moved here ahead of the deadline, largely because he has a no-move clause. So he has a lot of control. It does complicate things. It's not just up to the GM to see a deal he likes and then to take it and go. I mean, at the end of the day, they have to negotiate a deal that they like and get Hall to sign off on it. If he doesn't like it, doesn't want to go to that team, then so be it. They can't do it, right? So he could take all the time he needs to think about it, and we know that based on how he and his agent Darren Ferris do business, it would not be surprising at all if they really take their good old time with it. So maybe it happens sooner, but I won't be surprised if we're approaching the deadline on Monday and we're still waiting for the big news on Hall and where he's heading. But certainly the Islanders, even though they've already acquired Zajac and Palmieri, they have the option to go back and get Hall, so don't rule that out. Just because that deal's done doesn't mean they're out on Hall. Like I said, to a degree, the Leafs, I think they're interested. I'm just not convinced that he's right at the top of the list. And then, of course, you still have other teams as well on Hall. There's talk about St. Louis, which I'm not really sure makes sense for them, so I'm not really buying that rumor too much. To some degree, the Bruins, I've been hearing too, could be in on Hall. I understand they need secondary scoring for that second line to play with Krejci. That would make sense. They could move Craig Smith to the third line more. Probably would balance things out good, but depending on the price tag, I don't know that Boston really wants to lose a first-round pick, which is rumored what Buffalo was looking for. So as much as it makes sense for Boston to be interested, I just don't see them really wanting to meet the price tag. So I'm not entirely convinced that's going to happen, but it could be, maybe they do answer the price tag. I don't know, but I'm just not convinced Boston's going to do that deal, even though they do need to add something there. And then, of course, there's the Florida Panthers. The Panthers are another wild card team here. They got their defenseman and Brandon Montour. I think there's a lot of interest in Taylor Hall, and I can see how they could make that work and give up some more of their prospects or picks, because they seem to be wanting to push this year since they're having such a good regular season. So certainly more teams could be interested in Hall too. We can't rule out those teams that kind of fly under the radar a bit until you get right close to the last minute. The Avalanche, another team, we've seen them make some moves. They got a depth defenseman, a depth goalie. Are they done? Difficult to say. They may or may not be. So we can't rule them out completely as well. So let me know what your thoughts on all these latest players. Where are guys like Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, Jamie Alexiak, where are they going to end up? What are these teams going to do? There's lots of rumors out there. We've seen lots of trade activity. We may even have more this evening or into tomorrow. Wouldn't be surprised if we see a bunch more deals well ahead of the deadline. So let me know your thoughts in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around for all the content here on NHL Trade Deadline 2021 and beyond. We'll keep you up to date with all the entire teams and across the NHL 365 days a year. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you next time.